The smell hit me first. Funnel cake and cut grass and the particular sweetness of early May in Callaway, Tennessee. A smell I had been breathing every spring for 6 years, ever since I married into the Prescott family and their iron grip on the Callaway Spring Festival Committee. It was the kind of smell that should feel like a good thing. Like the start of something. By 7 in the morning the fairgrounds were already humming. Vendors rolling carts, children cutting between adult legs, the PA system doing its feedback whine before someone fixed the gain. The sky was the pale flat blue that means heat later. I was crouched behind my van with my back to all of it, unwrapping the last of the ranunculus in their damp paper, when I heard Diane's voice carrying across the open grass. Just set your things right here, sweetheart. This is a premium corner. Eastern light all morning. I stood up slowly. My table, the 6-foot folding table I had reserved in February, confirmation number 2247, printed and laminated and sitting in the front pocket of my bag, was already occupied. A young woman I had never seen before was arranging a display of honey jars in amber and gold where my flower buckets should have been. I walked over. Diane Prescott, my mother-in-law, stood with her back to me. She was speaking to the honey vendor with the warmth she had never once aimed in my direction. The full warmth, the open-handed Callaway civic warmth she deployed at ribbon cuttings and school board meetings and every festival morning for the 11 years she had run this committee. She wore her lanyard like a medal. Like proof. Diane, I said. She turned. She smiled. Oh, Nora. There you are. That's my table. It was yes. She tilted her head. The smile didn't shift. But Bethany drove 3 hours. She's a vendor in good standing and her original assignment flooded overnight. I needed to make an accommodation. You understand how these things work. I reserved that spot in February. I know. But you're local, Nora. He patted my arm once, the way you pat a child who has asked for something reasonable at the wrong time. Bethany is our guest. There's a spot available by the North Gate. Perfectly fine for your setup. I knew the North Gate spot. Concrete pillar blocking the sight line from the main path. Ground sloped enough that bucket displays tilted. No meaningful foot traffic after 10 a.m. I had watched 3 vendors pack up and leave from that exact spot before noon in consecutive years. I had watched it happen and said nothing because saying something was not a thing I had learned to do in this family yet. Diane. You never really belonged in the prime spots anyway, she said. Her voice dropped just slightly. Not a whisper. Just quiet enough to be deniable at a dinner table later. You're a hobbyist, Nora. Bethany is a professional. It's not personal. It's just logistics. She turned back to the honey vendor. I stood there. 3 seconds. Maybe 4. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I picked up my buckets. Before I tell you what the North Gate looked like that morning, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been handed a lesser version of something you earned, and then been told to be grateful for it? Drop your answer in the comments. I am reading every single one. My name is Nora Vance Prescott. I am 29 years old. I have been a florist, not a hobbyist, a licensed florist with a registered business account, a wholesale supplier contract, and $14,200 in verified gross sales from the previous calendar year, since I was 24 years old. My shop is called Grounded Stems. It sits on Birch Street in a 900 square foot space I rent for $1,100 a month. I grow approximately 40% of my own inventory in a quarter-acre plot behind my mother's house on Route 9, 12 minutes outside of town. I start my ranunculus from corm in January, which means 63 days of daily watering and temperature monitoring and covering the beds with frost cloth when the forecast dips below freezing. The other 60% I source from Bev Caldwell's farm supply operation and a wholesale distributor out of Nashville called Pedal Forward, where I spend an average of $380 per month depending on season. Diane Prescott has never once set foot inside Grounded Stems. She has, however, described my work as a little hobby project, at 4 separate Sunday dinners that I can recall specifically, in front of guests who nodded along because she said it with the confidence of someone reporting a fact. My husband Marcus absorbed these moments the way he absorbed most friction in his mother's presence. Quietly, with a slight shift of posture, the way a tree grows around a fence wire over enough years. He was not a cruel man. He was a man who had been trained since childhood to let Diane's version of reality go unchallenged because challenging it cost more than absorbing it. I had been absorbing it for 6 years. That is a different grief and not the one this story is about. The north gate spot was worse than I remembered. The pillar threw a shadow that consumed the left third of the table entirely by 8:15. The ground was uneven. A slope subtle enough that you wouldn't notice it walking past but significant enough that my bucket display leaned unless I compensated. I found a folded festival program on the ground and wedged it under the left rear leg. It held. The nearest electrical outlet was 60 feet away. My small misting fan was useless. I had with me 43 stems of coral ranunculus in 3 stages of bloom, 28 stems of white sweet peas whose scent was the best thing about the morning, 16 stems of purple lisianthus, and 30 mixed tulips in cream, blush and deep burgundy. I had my brown craft paper and my twine and my small chalkboard price sign and a mason jar of water for fresh cuttings. I had been loading this van since 5:30 a.m. I had driven 40 minutes in the dark because the parking situation at the fairgrounds required early arrival. I had unloaded alone because Marcus had a Saturday morning tea time that he had first forgotten, then remembered, then decided wasn't worth canceling. I arranged the flowers. I moved everything 18 inches to the right to chase the light away from the pillar's shadow. I pulled the burgundy tulips to the front because burgundy catches attention at a distance. I positioned the sweet peas at nose height because smell is what stops a person who wasn't planning to stop. I straightened the chalkboard sign. I put a single stem of coral ranunculus in the mason jar on the right corner of the table, loose like it was waiting for someone specific. By 8:15 I had my first customer. Paulette Odom taught 3rd grade at Callaway Elementary. She had a cloud of silver-streaked hair she never quite tamed and the particular energy of a person who has spent 20 years managing rooms full of 8-year-olds, warmly direct, constitutionally incapable of small talk, fully present. She had been buying flowers from my booth at this festival for 4 consecutive years. She found me behind the pillar, looked at the spot, looked at my table and looked at me. "Why are you back here?" "Accommodation issue," I said. She bought 2 bundles of sweet peas and a mixed tulip wrap. $15 even. She tucked them under her arm and stood there for another moment with the expression of someone making a calculation. "Diane's committee pulled your reservation," she said. It was not a question. I didn't answer. She nodded once. "Right." And then she left. I made change for the next customer. A man buying a single ranunculus stem for a reason he didn't explain, which happened more than people might expect, and I turned back to watch the festival grounds fill. From the north gate I had a partial sight line to my original table. I could see the honey jars glinting in the eastern light Diane had specifically mentioned. I could see Diane herself moving through the grounds in her lanyard, stopping at each prime vendor spot to check in, to adjust, to approve. I watched her speak to 7 different vendors in the first hour. She did not walk toward the north gate once. By 10 a.m. I had sold $67 worth of flowers and finished my thermos of coffee. My lower back ached from standing on the sloped concrete. My feet, in the practical waterproof clogs I wore every market day, felt the cold of the ground through the soles. And then I sat down on my cooler and I let myself be honest. I was tired. Not just the body tired of a 5:30 start and 40 minutes of solo unloading. I was tired in the accumulated way. The way tiredness builds when you have been told for 6 years in varying registers and volumes that the thing you built and tend and show up for every single day is a hobby. A placeholder. A little project. Something sweet but not serious. I looked at my tilted table with its chalkboard sign and its 31 remaining stems and the folded festival program propping up the left leg. The bluegrass band somewhere toward the main stage had started their second set. A child ran past me screaming with laughter at something I couldn't see. The fairgrounds smelled like popcorn and warm pavement now, the sweet pea scent from my table threading through it like something private. Thought about packing up. Seriously. Not as a dramatic gesture, just as a practical option. Load the van. Drive home. Water the Route 9 plot. Sit in my own kitchen with the windows open and let this day be a different kind of day. I sat with that option for longer than I want to admit. The cooler lid was hard under me. A bumblebee moved across the burgundy tulips with great seriousness, checking each one. The concrete was cold even through the plastic. I thought about the $1,100 rent due in 11 days. I thought about the pedal-forward invoice on my workbench. I thought about the ranunculus, 63 days from corm to stem, 2 frost-side covered 4, One morning in February when the cloth blew off in the wind at 4 a.m. and I'd driven to Route 9 in my pajamas to reset it because I wasn't going to lose 63 days of work to one cold hour. I thought, I am not a hobbyist. I stood up. I moved the burgundy tulips 1 inch to the left. I refilled the mason jar from my water bottle. I straightened the chalkboard sign, which had developed a slight lean to the right. And I stayed. Greta Sims found me at 11:15. She ran the pottery booth and had for 9 years, which made her the longest-tenured vendor at the Callaway Spring Festival after the Kettle Corn family from Murfreesboro. She was 61 years old. She had forearms built from clay work and a posture that suggested she had made her peace with taking up space. She spoke in the direct declarative sentences of someone who stopped hedging sometime around 2009 and never went back. She set 2 bundles of sweet peas on my table and put down a $20 bill. "Greta," I said, "these are $8. I know what they are." She looked at the pillar. She looked at the slope. She looked at the festival program wedged under the table leg. "How long has she been moving your reservations?" "It's an accommodation." "Nora." She said my name the way people say it when they want you to stop performing. "I was standing in the committee tent in January when she pulled your reservation card out of the priority file. She told Linda Marsh it was an administrative error from the previous year. Linda wrote it down." I stood very still. "You watched her do that," I said. "I did. In January." "Yes. And you didn't," I stopped. I didn't know how to finish that sentence without sounding like I was accusing her of something, and she had just paid $12 extra for sweet peas, so. "I didn't have a reason to say it yet," said Greta simply. "How I do." She picked up her flowers and walked back toward the main grounds without further explanation, which was, I was beginning to understand, entirely characteristic of her. The vendor appreciation moment was at 1:15. It was a Diane institution. A brief ceremony at the center pavilion where the committee recognized standout vendors and announced the following year's prime spot assignments. It had the quality of a ritual that had calcified into something else over time. What started as goodwill had become, in the years I'd been attending, a demonstration of who Diane's committee favored and who it did not. I had never been acknowledged. Not once in 6 years. I stayed at my table. I could hear the PA from the north gate. Diane's amplified voice, warm and official, moving through the recognition list. She thanked the sponsors. She thanked the volunteers. She thanked the committee members by name. And then the open comment period opened, which was a procedural feature Diane had introduced 3 years ago as a goodwill gesture, and which almost no one ever used, because using it meant standing at a microphone in front of everyone and saying a thing. Paulette Odom used it. Her voice came through the PA clear and unhurried, with the particular calm of a woman who has spent 20 years getting 38-year-olds to listen. "I just want to say something brief," Paulette said. "Grounded Stems has had a booth at this festival for 6 years. Nora Vance's arrangements are the reason I specifically come to this event in May and not the one in September. A lot of us feel that way. And I think most people here noticed this morning that she was assigned to the North Gate spot on the same day a new vendor took her reserved table. I'm not making an accusation. I'm just noting that I noticed. And I thought someone should say it out loud." The PA clicked off. The pause that followed had weight. It had the specific texture of a crowd reconsidering something it had accepted. Then a man's voice, Ray Tillman from the hardware store on 4th, I recognized it after a moment, said simply, "I noticed it too." A woman's voice, "Same here." Another, "Every year." Greta Sims appeared at my elbow. I hadn't heard her come back. "You should walk over," she said. "I'm fine here." "Nora." The specific patience again. "Walk over." I walked over carrying 17 tulip stems because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. It was not a dramatic scene. Callaway is a small town and small towns don't tend toward drama when they can produce the same effect through collective quiet. But the center pavilion had filled. Paulette was there and Greta and Bev Caldwell with her daughter Imani who sat on the school board and Ray Tillman and 6 or 7 other people whose faces I knew from years of Market Saturdays, and Linda Marsh from the committee standing with her clipboard and the expression of someone who has already made a private decision. Diane saw me coming. Her composure held. It was good composure, she had built it over decades. "Nora," she said. "I'm glad you came over. I was explaining the accommodation process." "You don't need to explain it to me," I said. I put the tulip stems down on the committee table. Gently. Among the paperwork and the coffee cups and the half-eaten cookies. Confirmation number 2247, I said. February 9th. I have the printout in my bag if Linda needs it for the record. Diane opened her mouth. Diane. Linda Marsh's voice. Quiet. Final. The voice of someone who had written something down in January and had been waiting. We should handle the administrative piece after the event closes. Diane looked at Linda. Something passed between them. And Diane closed her mouth. The crowd dispersed the way crowds do, gradually without announcement the way water finds its level. Bev Caldwell squeezed my arm as she passed. Your ranunculus are extraordinary this year, she said, which was not about the ranunculus. Imani handed me a business card. I'm coordinating the school's spring gala, she said. I'd like to talk to you about flowers. I sold the remaining 17 tulip bundles in the next 35 minutes. Every person who bought one said something to me. About grounded stems, about coming in on a Saturday, about how they'd driven past my shop on Birch Street more times than they could count. One woman said she'd been meaning to order a sympathy arrangement for 3 weeks and could she call me Monday. I said yes. By 3 p.m. I had $214 in my cash box, which was not a record but was real. The fairgrounds were winding down around me. The bluegrass band had finished. Children were overtired and audible about it. The Kettle Corn family from Murfreesboro was packing their equipment with the practiced efficiency of people who have done this every Saturday for 15 years. I folded my table. I loaded my van. I pulled the festival program from under the left rear leg and put it in the recycling bin by the gate. I have been thinking, in the weeks since the festival, about what it means to be seen in a place that has been looking past you. Not the dramatic moment. Not Paulette at the microphone, not Linda's quiet intervention. Not Diane's composure finally meeting something it couldn't absorb. Those were real. But they are not the thing that has stayed with me most. What stayed was Greta Sims in January. Standing in the committee tent. Watching Diane pull a reservation card and tell Linda Marsh it was an administrative error. Watching it. Knowing it. Carrying it for 4 months until a morning in May when she walked to the North Gate with a $20 bill and a willingness to say what she'd seen. She didn't rescue me. I want to be precise about that. I stayed at my table. I rearranged the tulips. I sold the flowers. The community spoke because the community had already been watching. Not because I performed anything for them, not because I demanded anything, but because I kept showing up and the truth accumulated over time until it became undeniable. There is something I want to say carefully about Diane. She is not a monster. She is a woman who built her identity around controlling a small kingdom. And somewhere along the way the line between serving the community and serving her own need to be indispensable blurred until she couldn't see it anymore. She has run the Callaway Spring Festival Committee for 11 years. She has done genuine good in that role. She also moved my reservation card in January and called me a hobbyist to my face and expected me to thank her for the pillar spot. Both things are true. I am learning to hold them both without needing one to cancel the other. 3 things. If you want them. 1. Staying is its own argument. Not a loud one. Not a righteous one. But a real one. Every time you show up to the thing you built, you are making a case that doesn't require an audience. 2. The people who dismiss you quietly are always counting on you to accept their version of what you're worth. The moment you stop, even privately, even just by rearranging the tulips one more time, something shifts that they cannot control. 3. Chosen family doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it walks up to your tilted table at the North Gate with a $20 bill and says, I was there in January. I saw what she did. I just needed a reason to say it. Greta Sims comes into Grounded Stems on Saturday mornings now. She orders the same thing each time, white sweet peas and whatever I have in coral. She sits on the stool near my work table while I cut and wrap, and we talk about things that have nothing to do with the Prescott family. Her daughter is finishing a ceramics residency in Asheville. She has a dog named Clive who is 17 years old and has opinions about weather. The light in my shop on Saturday mornings comes through the east-facing storefront windows and lands on the flower buckets in a way that makes me stop for a second every time I see it. The colors stacked in their water, the stems angled just so, the whole thing exactly as alive as I built it to be. Imani Caldwell's school gala order came in at $1,840. She referred 2 wedding clients to me the following month. My projected annual revenue is now approximately $23,000, which is not a fortune. It is real. It is mine. Bev Caldwell added me to the Pedal Forward group order she coordinates for 3 other small florists in the county, which brings my per stem cost down by about 11%. 11% is not nothing when you are paying $1,100 a month in rent. Marcus and I are having a harder conversation now. I don't know yet where it ends. But I am having it, which is more than I was doing before May. The North Gate spot is still the worst spot at the Callaway Spring Festival. The pillar is still there. The slope hasn't been graded. Linda Marsh sent a brief email in June noting that the committee would be reviewing the reservation process before next year's event, which is the most official thing anyone has said about any of it. Paulette Odom asked me twice what I'm planning to submit for next year. Whatever confirmation number they give me, I told her. She laughed. I meant it completely. Have you ever stayed somewhere you were supposed to feel embarrassed by, and discovered later that more people had been watching than you ever knew? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. I'm Nora. I grow my own ranunculus. I am not a hobbyist.